You sit down at a restaurant table and look at the menu. You might choose a medium-rare steak, a bowl of steaming ramen, or a perfectly roasted sweet potato. You do not think about the fire that made it possible. You only think about the flavor. But the real answer to why you love that flavor is far stranger than a simple preference. It is a biological addiction carved into your DNA over 2 million years ago. Before that moment, your ancestors spent up to 6 hours every single day doing nothing but chewing. They chewed raw leaves, tough roots, and bloody, rubbery raw meat. Their jaws were massive, their teeth were flat, and their guts were incredibly long and complex. It took a massive amount of physical energy just to break down raw calories. Your ancestors were trapped in a never-ending cycle of chewing just to survive. Have you ever wondered what broke that cycle? It wasn't a sudden evolutionary leap in intelligence. It was an accident involving a wildfire and a piece of discarded food. Imagine a small band of Homo erectus foraging through a smoldering forest after a lightning strike. The air smells of smoke, ash, and something entirely new. They find the charred remains of an animal trapped in the blaze. One brave ancestor reaches down, pulls off a piece of cooked meat, and puts it in their mouth. It doesn't taste like the cold, bloody flesh they are used to. It is soft, it tears easily, and it bursts with an intense, rich savoriness. That single moment changed the trajectory of human history forever. Dr. Richard Wrangham, an evolutionary anthropologist at Harvard University, argues that this switch to cooked food was the literal spark that made us human. Cooking acted as a form of external digestion. It broke down complex proteins and softened tough fibers before the food even touched their lips. Suddenly, a meal that used to take 3 hours to chew could be swallowed in minutes. Your ancestors' bodies no longer needed to waste massive amounts of energy maintaining a giant, heavy digestive tract. Over generations, their guts shrank, their jaws became smaller, and their faces softened into the shape you see in the mirror today. Where did all that saved energy go? It went straight to the brain. The human brain is an incredibly greedy organ. It makes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes 20% of your daily calories. A raw diet simply could not provide enough energy to fuel a brain as complex as yours. By cooking their food, your ancestors unlocked a massive surplus of easily digestible calories. The brain began to expand at an unprecedented rate, growing larger and more complex with every passing generation. But what did that very first intentional meal actually taste like? It certainly didn't taste like a modern barbecue. There was no salt, no pepper, no olive oil, and no garlic. It was incredibly primitive, cooked directly on open coals or buried under hot ashes. The exterior was bitter and heavily charred with black carbon. The interior was unevenly cooked, ranging from raw and chewy to dry and overdone. Yet, to your ancestors, it tasted like absolute heaven. They were tasting the birth of the Maillard reaction. This is the chemical reaction that occurs when heat transforms amino acids and sugars into hundreds of new flavor compounds. It is the exact scientific phenomenon that makes seared steak smell incredible and gives baked bread its golden crust. Dr. Thomas Hofmann, a food chemist at the Technical University of Munich, discovered that the Maillard reaction produces specific aroma molecules that activate deep evolutionary reward centers in your brain. When you smell roasted meat, your brain isn't just saying that smells good. It is recognizing the scent of highly concentrated, easily accessible energy. Your ancestors quickly became addicted to that smell. They stopped wandering aimlessly and began to gather around the fire every single night to recreate that accidental magic. The campfire became the world's very first kitchen. This brings us to a fascinating study conducted by Dr. Felix Warneken at Harvard. He tested whether chimpanzees prefer raw or cooked food when given a choice. The results were overwhelming. The chimps consistently chose the cooked food, demonstrating an innate preference for the textures and flavors created by heat. They even showed the ability to understand that raw food placed into a specific container would transform into cooked food. The preference for cooked food is deeply embedded in the primate lineage. However, your ancestors took it a step further by learning to control fire. They went from passive scavengers of wildfire leftovers to active culinary creators. They experimented with different woods, wrapped food in wide leaves to trap moisture, and buried roots in hot sand. Every experiment altered the chemical composition of their diet. Every cooked meal made them more dependent on the kitchen. We are the only species on Earth that cannot survive on a purely raw diet in the wild. If you were forced to eat only raw wild foods today, you would rapidly lose weight and suffer from chronic energy deficiency. Our digestive systems have become so specialized for cooked food that we can no longer process raw nutrients efficiently enough to sustain our massive brains. We are legally married to the stove. The next time you hear the sizzle of food hitting a hot pan, take a moment to listen closely. That sound is a direct echo of the smoldering African savanna 2 million years ago. The intense craving you feel for a warm, savory meal is not a modern luxury. It is the ancient whisper of an ancestor who picked up a piece of charred meat from the ashes, tasted the future, and changed your biology forever. You are not just a tool-making ape who learned to cook. You are a creature entirely created by the flame.